They know that if hit you twice, and even though you might have shared something with your family member, they know that you're going to come back. It takes a victim on average 7 to 10 times to leave. So that if you're in this position and you found yourself going, coming back, going, coming back, you have to understand that domestic violence is a systematic pattern of behavior. It's not something that's going to change one day out of the blue because they decided, you know what, I'll go to church counseling with you. Okay. I'll go to counseling with you and I'll listen to the pastor. Oh, you know what? I'll apologize today. Oh, you know what? I'll take you out on a date and show you how much I love you. Love is an action verb.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ilera Wellness. My name is Gisela Deschamps. I'm a raw food chef, and I have the pleasure to have today Solange Deschamps, who is obviously a doctor in nutrition and a naturopath. And we also have a Lovern Gordon, who is going to introduce herself soon. I'm not going to tell you guys who she is yet, unless you hear that from her own mouth, which is more interesting. So we have an interesting topic today that we're going to talk about, which is domestic violence in women, right? So it is very important to talk about that because a lot of people are still unaware of it, and we need to create awareness around the topic.
So hi, Lovern. So thank you very much for accept our invitations. So Lovern, can you please introduce yourself for our audience?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. And again, for creating space around the issue of domestic violence. This is in the States, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And as you mentioned, my name is Lovern Gordon. I run a foundation that promotes year-round awareness around the issue of domestic violence. It's called Love Life Now Foundation. And we promote awareness around the issue because we don't want the issue of domestic violence to be in the forefront when you hear about it in the news, or you may have heard about it in a newspaper story. These things you only see for about 2-3 minutes tops, and then it goes away, right? But this issue is really brewing behind the scenes of closed doors throughout the year, every day, every 9 seconds in the US alone it is happening. So we focus on education around it.
Oh, that's interesting. That actually is amazing. The other thing that you probably forgot to tell to our audience is that you are the author of an amazing book, The Legacy He Left Me. You're going to tell us a little bit about that book, right?
Absolutely. And so the book again is called The Legacy He Left Me. And I come to this work and as an author, as a 2-time survivor, a child witness to the issue growing up on the island of Trinidad, and then as an adult survivor of a young adult relationship that lasted from 21 to 23 years old. And so the book really talks about what it meant to be a child witness coming in behind closed doors and what that looked like as a child, but then how it goes on to affect you in adulthood, in young adulthood, and what these attitudes and behaviors that our parents sort of bestow upon us from very early on, what they can look like for us as children in later on in life. And so legacy, right? When we think about legacy, we think about wealth, generational wealth and money and something passed down that is good. We don't often think about attitudes and behaviors surrounding relationships and how parents really are the first indicators about what our adult relationships will look like. And so it was really important to me to finally write a book after doing this work for 10 years. 10 years is our 10-year anniversary is coming up next month. And it was really important for me to write the book starting October last year and finishing in January this year, published in June this past year. It was really important to highlight those issues and to show people the behind the scenes of, again, how this issue looks for children from this high to getting up into age and how it follows them into adulthood. Oftentimes when you hear about domestic violence, you're often hearing about it from an adult, but you don't hear about, again, these relationship issues that children face in their own homes day in and day out that really help and lend to perpetuating the issue of domestic violence later on in life, because it is a learned behavior oftentimes, and it is 90% of the time learned. So it was really important for me to write the book and sort of spotlight those issues and how they connected for folks who probably have never been affected by this issue.
You're right, completely. And we thank you so much for publishing that because domestic violence is such an important topic that is affecting 1/3 of women, according to the World Health Organization, right? Whether you believe it or not, this is so impactful, and we are so grateful that you're bringing that to life. So you have been both a witness and a victim of domestic violence during your childhood and adult life, respectively. And a lot of women are still victims of domestic violence, and they are either unaware of it, in denial of it, ignore it, or are silent about it. How does a woman know that she's a victim of domestic violence, according to you?
Yeah, and so oftentimes it's really hard when you are getting into an abusive relationship. It's really hard to spot the signs if you're not fully aware of them from before, right? And this is where the awareness part comes in and why we do the work that we do, because oftentimes those behaviors and those attitudes that are put upon us, it's hard for us to spot. One, because we might be so enamored with the abuser, right? Who I want to shine the spotlight on, not us as victims, because we're not doing this to ourselves. When these behaviors are put upon us, we take it as sometimes caring, right? They're checking up on us because they want to know where we are, and we take it as, oh, look at the amount of attention they're showing me. They are hyperly jealous over people that you speak to, especially guys, and we take it as, oh, he loves me so much. They might, dismiss your what you're saying in a conversation, and you might take it as, well, maybe you're right. And so we oftentimes sort of put these things to the back burner because we want to acknowledge all the great things that are already happening in the relationship. You know what? So it's okay that, he kind of put me down that time because we go out on a lavish date after and he apologizes with that. It's okay that, he's checking up on me like this because you know what? He wants to make sure I'm safe. And so we often dismiss, sort of the big red flags that are glaring at us because we think lightning is not going to strike twice. This person is so in love with me and goes to such great lengths to apologize to me when they do something wrong that it's not that bad. And that is what it was for me. I thought in the beginning of my particular relationship that things were okay until I saw a very big glaring red flag and I dismissed it because you know what? Everything else was good. Despite the fact that he did this bad thing to me and I initially said that I was done, I took him back. Because the elaborate apology that came next was enamored. It was a grand gesture. And oftentimes, again, when we're in the beginning of these relationships, these subtle behaviors that sort of build and build and build from abusers, we tend to let them, again, dismiss them, because we think, you know what? He's apologized and he's not going to do it again. And the person that I fell in love with for 3 months, where I saw none of these glaring red flags, is going to show up again. So I got to make it work. And I got to stay for the kids. And I got to make sure that, I'm doing the right thing by my parents. And all of these things and why the reasons why we stay, before we know it, 3 months in, 4 months in, we're totally emotionally sort of captured by this person who's manipulated us up to this point. And we're thinking, okay, this is where it's at and this is where I need to stay. So again, the red flags, some of them that I just mentioned: jealousy, possessive behavior, wanting to know about controlling your whereabouts, not just wanting to know, but controlling your whereabouts, who you talk to, when you talk to them, the way you dress, the way you wear your hair, all of these subtle behaviors continue to build and build and build until we're in a position where they have complete power and control over our lives, which is what this issue surrounds, power and control. And so it's really hard to miss unless you're really, really paying attention. And oftentimes we don't know what those are. And so that's why we founded the foundation, is to continuously put those behaviors and those red flags in the forefront so that folks can understand that this is such an easy issue to fall prey to. But there are ways to get out, right? And I know we'll get into those later.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. Thank you, Loden. And this is not an easy work to do, because I think that this take a lot of time, this take a lot of courage, this take a lot of, I can say, a lot of strongness to achieve what you do. And we thank you, because we believe that a lot of women, they need this help also. And paradoxically, also, there are a number of women who are victims of domestic violence, and they are still stay in the marriage, or they are the relationship also, for one reason or the other. So what are some of the reasons why you left, and how did you know that it was the good time to leave?
Yeah, and so that's a good question, because oftentimes you hear the question, why do victims stay? Why doesn't she just leave? I mean, that would never be me. And again, by the time you're so enveloped in this type of relationship, you really don't see any way out. The other side, even if you think about doing it, is daunting. And so for me, if I'm answering that question honestly, I really didn't know that I was leaving, okay, when I decided that I needed to get help for the first time for myself. After he beat me the last time, the full-on attack lasted from about 9 o'clock the night before and went till about 2 o'clock the next morning. That was the worst beating that I had ever endured in this particular relationship. And that particular morning, knew I had to make a choice based on the pain that I was feeling in my body. It was either stay and wait for him to wake up and finish the job, or get up and get help. And for the first time, I chose myself. I chose myself in the relationship, and I had never done that before. And it was scary. And did I know that I was completely done with him? No. Did I know that I couldn't go back to being in a room with him at any given point? Yes, because I had gotten to my breaking point. I had known to myself that if I went back, that he would finish the job, or the next attack would be way worse. And so getting to the ER that particular morning, finding myself help, the doctor then presented the word help to me. And that meant a whole plethora of things. It meant police could potentially get involved. It meant my building could find out why, they would hear ruckus in my apartment at times. It meant my family could finally find out what was really going on in this relationship that I had hid for so long or tried to hide. It meant that my school would find out why I was on my way to flunking my first year of college. It meant a whole list of things that I didn't want. So I fessed up and told the truth. And I went home not knowing it was the most dangerous time for me. That then set off a whole other set of events, because I then finally said to my abuser that I was done. And oftentimes when you tell an abuser that you're done and that you're through, and they see you taking steps to leave, that is the most dangerous time for victims,
Exactly.
right? When they decide to leave. So oftentimes you'll hear in the news, she was getting ready to leave and he killed her. Yeah. She was getting ready to file for divorce and he killed her, the kids, and himself. These issues or these stories that you see aren't because someone just decided to wake up and abuse their wife or kill their wife. It's because these behaviors were brewing behind closed doors for a long time. And it was the same for me. And again, even though I had left and I sought help for myself, I still loved this person. This person that claimed to love me, I still love them, and I didn't want to get them in trouble. I didn't want, to be the cause of why another Black man was incarcerated, right? There were all these things that were looming over my head, and at the center of it was fear. I didn't want him to come find me, because I would make him really mad if I reported to someone, right? I eventually had to, because it got so bad to the point where he tried to break into my apartment, cut the phone lines in my basement, and I finally had to call the cops. And even then, I still didn't give him up. I said somebody was trying to break into my apartment because, again, I wanted to protect him, right? Leave my safety by the wayside and protect him as much as I can. All I wanted was for the abuse to stop, but I still loved him. And then that led to stalking behavior. When he realized that I would call the police, he started leaving derogatory notes on my car. And then that became an issue of, gosh, if he can show up and leave notes like this anywhere at any time, he could be anywhere. He could be, behind a tree waiting for me. He could be at my doorstep waiting for me. And that's when I realized, okay, Lovern, you have to take a drastic step to try to keep yourself safe. And that's when I finally went to court and filed a restraining order. But, again, it wasn't to the point where I decided, well, okay, I'm done with this relationship and that's it. I was still in a very, very confused position, or not sure whether or not I should, tell the cops, don't further pursue him. I should call him up and apologize for going the routes that I did. All of these things ran through my head. But I had to, at the very end, realize that he was going to never stop. He was going to always find a way to keep control over my life. And filing that restraining order finally kept him away. But a lot of victims get to the end and they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should leave. He beats me, but he takes care of the kids. He beats me, but he's the financial breadwinner. He beats me and he's a good father. All of these reasons are why victims end up staying, but that should never be the question. The question should always be, how can we hold abusers accountable for their actions? Slaps on the wrist through the court system, holding them behind closed bars for a week or two, sending them to anger management classes. All of these things do nothing because they're just looking to satisfy the court and go back out and perpetuate the behavior again against somebody else. And this is the way that the cycle keeps repeating itself. So if I'm answering that question honestly, I don't think I was at the point where I was ready. I just knew I had to do something to stay alive.
And that's the most important thing, right? Because
Exactly.
there's a difference between loving and abusing someone. And we need to realize what is the most important choice for a woman to make at the moment she decides to take the next step in her life. And usually a lot of things are involved, right? That you mentioned, kids and other things. But the most important thing is how to keep the woman safe first, and children eventually, if they're involved.
Yes.
And then everything else falls behind it. So do you consider yourself healed from your experience as a victim of domestic violence? And if yes, what resources did you use to heal, basically, and achieve your wellness?
Yeah, I will say that's a big word, heal. I think at this point, I am comfortably navigating what happened to me, right? I think this issue follows you for a lifetime, and that's why we went with the cover, the particular cover that you see on the book, is because, behind closed doors, there's these physical scars that you can visibly see. But then even if you never see those scars on the outside, we present, or we have to present in this very perfect, I'm okay way, the other half of the face to society on a daily basis, when we really have all of those scars underneath that we're still dealing with. And I think it's the same for me. And for any woman that's gone through this issue, or anybody that's been affected by this issue, is that, those scars really never go away. But we learn how to navigate the trauma from it all. And so I'm much better. I'll say that I'm much better. And for me, it's been a journey. It's continued to be a journey. And it started out as, when I finally let go of that relationship, which was very hard, emotionally and mentally, I started going to church. For me, it was re-engaging with my faith. That really sort of started me on a path of, re-entering society, not being daunted by a man saying hello to me, because I was told for over and over again that if I looked at another man or in his direction, or struck up a conversation or engaged in conversation with them, I was often told by my abuser that I was the one inviting unwarranted attention. And so, re-entering society, it was like, okay, it's okay. It's okay to talk to people and realize that it's not a bad thing that he painted it out to be. So, church and my faith really played a huge part. Praying was a big self-care favorite of mine, because I needed to release what had happened to me and talk about it. And it wasn't for a very long time that I could talk about it with anybody, but I could with my spiritual father, right? And so letting it out, and that was tears. That was just long talks with God, right? And just, continuously just engaging spiritually with what had happened to me. And then it led to therapy. And therapy, God says he'll help those who help themselves, right? We cannot walk by faith alone. We have to engage with the earthly things that's put upon the earth for us to navigate these things. And therapy was a great outlet for me. I did that for about a year back then, and I was really able to start to understand that what happened to me wasn't my fault. And that really therapy really married that for me. Many years later, just again last year, I just been writing the book. I have and forming the foundation, I should say, even before that. That enabled me to continuously talk about what had happened to me publicly. And that's been very cathartic, because again, the more I spoke from the very first time, people said Me Too, right? Way before the Me Too movement started, people kept saying Me Too. And I was like, oh my gosh, if this is happening to me, and this person who I regard as this well-to-do, very well put together person, if it's happening to them, it must be happening to other people. So I continue to talk about it, and it's been very cathartic. And I will say again, after writing the book, it put me in a really bad space, because I had to revisit so many details that I thought that I had dealt with. And this is why I say that I comfortably navigate this issue now, rather than being healed, because I thought I was healed up until writing the book. And I started writing in October, as I mentioned, and by November, sisters, Giselle, and I realized that I could not do this on my own. I started having brutal nightmares. I was seeing women killed in my sleep, brutally, and it was like as if it were very, very real. My PTSD shot up to 1,000, right? It was at 100 before, it shot up to 1,000. So very jumpy, very, very scared at my own shadow. And so all of these things were started to permeate in my daily life. And by November, I'm like, okay, Lovern, you got to get help. And I sought therapy again. And I found one in January. And I've been seeing her every Wednesday, every week. And now it's not to the point where I am still affected from the things that are, written in the book. It's now a point where I have this non-judgmental person that I can use as a sounding board for anything happening in life. And it's made me a better person. Right. And again, this journey in recognizing and advocating for mental health, it's gotten me to understand that I will never be rid of this issue, but I've found tools now to help me navigate it when the triggers flare up, because triggers do flare up, and they can be in the form of songs, that your abuser used to play when you were together. It can be in the form of a behavior that your new beau or your new spouse does that reminds you of what happened then. It can be in the form of something that somebody said that, reminds you of the things that they used to do, and it brings you right back to what happened then. And it's really hard to escape in the moment. But how you deal with it, right, and the tools that you can get to deal with them is what's going to set you apart from sort of regressing and falling into depression. or sort of recognizing what's happening and dealing with it in the moment, or finding time to deal with it later on, but never just keeping it and holding on to it. So yeah, that's what I'll say, is that I'm comfortably continuously navigating this journey. And I think that's what it is for a lot of victims, is that we get to the other side of this issue and we think, well, I'm good, I'm no longer with them, and I just need to move on. And sometimes we hear that a lot from people on the outside too. You know what? You've escaped and you're good now. You have a great job and your kid's okay. No, that's not the way this whole works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I'm very happy you're talking about that, Lovern, because the solid foundations are what will keep you going, right? Because you talk about triggers, they are all over our place today. Everything can be a trigger. So it is important that you hold on to things that are going to let you move forward. And you mentioned two things. You mentioned faith via prayer, and you mentioned therapy, which is the reason why we created Ilera Wellness, right? To help people in naturopathy, nutrition, to help them also mentally, because if you don't have a solid foundation, it's easy to fall apart. It's easy to go back to the wrong behavior, right?
Exactly.
The supporting system is what is necessary for all women to have.
Exact. And I'm very happy because, Lovern, you mentioned the words therapy. Therapy is very important because usually when we check and when we go to the background of these guys, is they've been victim of violence when they were kids, and they didn't follow any therapy. That's why they transmit it after to other persons. And unfortunately, is these new women that they find that have to suffer from the violence that they have been violent during their childhood.
Correct.
And it's important for these guys also that, or these women that are making violence to people, that they have to notice that they need to do a therapy, because usually this person, they consider themselves that they are very good, they don't have any psychological problems, and they transmit it. And the way to how to do a therapy, and that's the naturopathy and the nutrition also, that's block this step. And you cannot, you will not transmit it to another person. And this is very important to break at this stage. And I want them to be very open-minded, and open-minded to a therapy, open-minded to a treatment, and also acknowledge that they have this trouble,
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with sort of finding a solution. My social media post this morning sort of relates to that, is that not in relation to this. So oftentimes abusers are not going to take accountability. And that's part of the biggest problem. Narcissists don't believe that they've done, like you said, anything wrong, that they're always right, and you're the cause of what and why this is happening. And so denying and minimizing blame is a huge part of why this issue continues to perpetuate, because oftentimes people don't want to admit that this is who they are. But again, if someone is able to take stock of where they come from and where they are right now, so again, learned behavior. If you know that your parents exhibited these behaviors, and you then picked up some sort of semblance of what they did, and then again perpetuated it in your own relationship, and you realize that, gosh, yes, please seek therapy. There are too many men's groups that exist. Right here in Massachusetts, there's Emerge out of Malden, and they have men's groups, abuser education for men, to understand what this issue looks like and how they can circumvent it through therapy, through education, through awareness. But you have to make the choice to do that, like you said, right? And oftentimes folks are not going to make the choice. The same way that victims who also learn this behavior from their parents, like myself, right? Subconsciously, even though you say it's never going to be me, you end up receiving love the same way you saw your mother receive love, right? We have to make a choice in the end to get help. And it's the same way that abusers have to make that choice. But oftentimes it's the victim that is left to pick up the pieces from this issue. You got to get yourself safe. You got to keep your mind sane. You got to make sure that you pick up, from the remnants from all the trauma that you experienced. But you never hear, or you never hear the abuser, which is 90% of the time men, being asked to do the work. Right?
Yeah.
You never hear. So
Exactly.
we as women, we're sitting and we're having this great conversation
Yeah.
about domestic violence awareness and why men should stop harming us and why men should be at the forefront, but we're not oftentimes involving men. And that is what my post is about today on social media. If you check it out at Love Life Now Found, is asking men to be more vocal around this issue, because we can sit here and we can say, stop harming us, stop killing us, you're doing wrong by us. But if we're not involving men in the conversation, then we're spinning our wheels, because 90% of the time they are the perpetrators. And it's so prevalent, it's so important for me in the work that we do through the foundation to always sort of throw that in there. Yes, it's great. We're empowering each other and women to be part of the solution and, realize what the red flags are. But why do we have to do that? Why do we have to do that? Why can't abusers be accountable for their behavior? Why can't the justice system hold them more accountable when they are found guilty? These are all the things that we need to address and continue to address through conversations like this. So again, it's for me, it's about accountability on both ends. How do you find yourself again once you're done and out of a relationship that has been abusive and traumatic? But then also, how does your abuser recognize their behavior
Right.
and seek to circumvent it so that it never happens again to someone else? Because guess what? Your kids, if not for you, for your kids have seen you act like this, and they're going to do the same thing when they get older.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, Lovern, we could keep you the whole day, because this is a passionate topic, right? We are so passionate about that, but we don't want to waste your time. But I do have one more question for you. What is your message to women who are still victims of domestic violence and do not know how to go about it?
Yeah, your voice has power. Many times abusers prey upon our silence. They are hell-bent on you staying where you are, right? And you not saying anything because they know you're not going to say anything. They know that they've hit you once and you didn't tell your family. They know that they've hit you twice, and even though you might have shared something with your family member, they know that you're going to come back. It takes a victim on average 7 to 10 times to leave. So that if you're in this position and you found yourself going, coming back, going, coming back, you have to understand that domestic violence is a systematic pattern of behavior. It's not something that's going to change one day out of the blue because they decided, you know what, I'll go to church counseling with you. Okay. I'll go to counseling with you and I'll listen to the pastor. Oh, you know what? I'll apologize today. Oh, you know what? I'll take you out on a date and show you how much I love you. Love is an action verb. And if this person's actions aren't saying love, then you have to understand that it's never going to change. It's a systematic pattern of behavior that is exerting power and control. So if you have found yourself in this situation and you're thinking, well, maybe I need to reassess what's happening to me and I don't know what to do next, I urge you to find the nearest domestic violence agency in your area. Go on their website if you're not ready to pick up the phone and call. Recognize some of the services that they can provide to you, which in part include safety planning. When we think we're ready to leave, oftentimes we think we can do it on our own. Oftentimes we think we can do it with the help of a family member, and that's just not simply the case. You need the help of a DV advocate or a DV agency to help you figure out what your unique situation is and how you can leave safely. So that can include setting up a code word that you can recognize with, not you, but other people that may be on the phone with you that says, you know what, I'm in trouble. And that code word is pizza, right? Setting up code words that lets other people know you're in danger and you need help. Having money stashed away, whether you keep saving it, $1. You might say, oh my God, he's the financial breadwinner and I could never get away. Saving $1 every day, saving $2, $5, and keeping a stash of money that can help you when you decide that, okay, I've had enough. Copying important documents that you need to escape. That can be Social Security, passport, all the documents that they may even have control over. Getting access to them if you could, and getting important documents, because you need to start over your life, right? That can be changing your password, once you've gone to your mother's house that he doesn't know where she lives, right? Often changing up your whole, schedule, so that they can't follow you because they already know your schedule from back to front. Switching that up, switching up the places that you drive, the normal routes that you go. All of these things go into safety planning, and these are all the things that a domestic violence agency can help you with. So I urge someone, if they're in this setting, to please speak up. Your voice has power, and once you do that, it's a game changer. Right? Because they prey on you being silent, and your silence is what is hiding the violence, right? So please speak up, find help. They're everywhere. Domestic violence agencies are everywhere. If you need to figure out, which is the one in your area, it's right here. It's 1-800-799-SAFE. Again, 1-800-799-SAFE is the National Domestic Violence Hotline number in the US, and they can absolutely point you in the direction of help in Canada, in Africa, in the Caribbean. No matter where you are, they can point you in the right direction for help.
Wow, Lovern,
thank you.
Very, very much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
These are very important resources that you provided, and we thank you so much for being there today and for talking about this. Remember, guys, a pain that is not transformed is transmitted. I love that sentence, because a lot of people believe that, yeah, there's a chance to go back to the abusers, but no, a pain that is not transformed, if they don't do the work on themselves, is going to be transmitted, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for that. Once again, this was an interview with Lovern Gordon on domestic violence. She's the author of the book, The Legacy That He Left Me. I'm still reading mine. It's very interesting. So please go get your copy and get inspired by her story, and especially make a difference around you. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lovern.
Absolutely. I was just going to point out that you can get the book at thelegacyheleftme.com, and it's everywhere in bookstores. Any bookstore outlet, you can get it there. Thank you, ladies.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lovern. We appreciate it, and we hope to see you one more time in person when everything is back to normal. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for watching us. We'll see you in the next episode of Il Era Wellness.
Thank you. Bye-bye.